it's 4 different ways that people approach investing, which is kind of why I'm spinning it as the 4 different types of investors. And maybe you'll understand a little bit later why I'm doing that, because I'm going to basically look at each of these and kind of chat about some experiences where I've been in each one of these camps.
Welcome to another episode of The Financially Free Investor, where you will learn information and strategies on how to become financially independent by investing in real estate, something that is not taught openly in our society today. Financial freedom matters so you can live a bigger life, retire early, and do what matters most to you. Get ready to hear tried and true methods to becoming financially free with your host, Jordy Clark.
Hey everyone, welcome into another episode of the Financially Free Investor podcast. And aloha, because today, me and my beautiful bride, Courtney, aloha, Courtney.
Aloha.
Are recording this from Hawaii, from Maui. We came over here to celebrate our 10-year anniversary and having a great time, aren't we?
It's been amazing.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to record at least one podcast here. And today, I'm going to be boring and talk about something I read on our flight over here. But I thought it was really, really interesting. And as I was reading this book, I kept thinking, I should record a podcast on this and just filter my experience from this, because it's been a while since I've read this book. So can you help me out?
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in with you.
All right, cool. Well, guys, I was reading The Millionaire Real Estate Investor on the flight over here from Gary Keller, the man, the myth, the legend. And started Keller Williams. They grew it huge, and he's got a bunch of different books out. And so anyways, it's probably been a couple years since I read this book. Have you ever read it?
No, I haven't ever read it. But
Okay.
I will say, just to kind of piggyback on who Gary Keller is, the one thing that even I didn't, the one thing, no pun intended there, that's his book, The One Thing, his other book. No, I have actually a lot of respect for him. I think what's really cool is that Gary Keller is not, if you look at his track record, he's had his highs and lows in business. Mm-hmm. And overall, he's a very successful person. But I love his story of perseverance, and that he continues to refine and do things better and better and find ways to optimize. And I really love Gary Keller and what he's about and what he's trying to do.
So you should read this book then. Maybe on the flight back, you can read it.
You know what I think I should do? I think I should record this podcast with you, and then I'm going to re-listen to it. I'm going to let you educate me, because I can't quite dive into that book yet.
Okay. Well, in his book, he talks about and I'm going to take a little spin on this just because this is my content and I don't want to just read from a book. But he talks about 4 different types of investors. So he talks about an observer, a speculator, a collector, and an investor. And it's 4 different ways that people approach investing, which is kind of why I'm spinning it as the 4 different types of investors. And maybe you'll understand a little bit later why I'm doing that, because I'm going to basically look at each of these and kind of chat about some experiences where I've been in each one of these camps. Because I think, life is a progression, and we certainly don't have it all figured out even to this day, but I can see where I've been, an observer at times. I can see where I've been a speculator at times. I can see where I've been a collector at times, and then I can also see the times I've been an investor. So here's the interesting thing. I think most people are observers. They love ideas. They consume content, but they buy nothing. And today in our social media world, I think it's very easy to stay at this level, to be an observer. Courtney's nodding her head yes. And man, even with social media, like it's just so easy to, you follow certain people and they put out content, and it's just like you're observing them doing something. And I think the weird thing is somehow, and I don't fully understand any of the science or anything behind it, but somehow, at least for me, when I consume content, and especially when I probably over-consume content, I feel like I've actually done something.
Really?
I don't know if you feel that way.
No, but I can relate to, I know we're talking about these profiles in the context of investing, but I think it's fascinating that an observer in general, that I think plays into pretty much anything, kind of like what you're saying. And I even actually think of, take social media out of it and just networking groups, and we attend a real estate investors seminar. Jordy is religious and goes every week, but he's also the vice president, so he has to, or every month, excuse me. But he has to because he's the vice president.
He gets to.
I get to when the schedule allows it, and I actually really enjoy them. But you know what's fascinating is even those, and I'm not saying being an observer is wrong. And I don't think that's what you're saying either.
No.
But it's just fascinating that there's a lot of people who they, like you say, they will consume all the knowledge, and they probably retain it actually fairly well, but they aren't taking any action into anything. And obviously in this context, we're talking about people who, they love ideas and they love hearing how to get started, and they'll invest their time and they'll really dive in deep into consuming all the information they can. They'll sit down and have lunch with people. I mean, how many people have you had times that people come and ask to have lunch with you? A year later, they've never done one single thing, but yet you've seen them at all these groups. And usually money has nothing to do with it. They just buy nothing. And that's who an observer is, right? They love ideas, but they buy nothing.
Yeah, and interestingly, like if I were to put a number on it, as far as like the real estate investor associations that I'm a part of, I'd probably say 80 to 85% of the people are observers. And like you said, that's okay. We all have to start somewhere. And it's not like you can just jump straight in, right? Like you kind of have to consume content. You kind of have to learn, hey, is this the path I want, before you start going down it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but so many people get stuck there and stop there.
Yeah, I think the point that you're trying to make here is it's great to be an observer and utilize the time of being an observer. So all of these profiles, like Jordy mentioned, you've had your seasons in them. I remember when you were an observer that you gathered a lot of information, but you bought nothing. Now, part of why you bought nothing was because of me. Other part of it was money and lack of relationships to be able to move forward. So it's a good thing at times, and it's okay to be an observer. But then there's times where you need to recognize when the season's over and it's time to shift.
Yep. Yeah, and the interesting thing is people who invest a lot of time, money, and energy being an observer, if you don't take any action, it doesn't matter. You've just wasted time, money, and energy, right? Like at a certain point, you have to go out and find the motivation and take action. And that's one thing, like a lot of people I think are motivated, but they don't understand or have a why behind it. And I mean, you can extrapolate that out into anything in life probably, but just knowing your why makes it easier to get over some of those fears and to be able to go, okay, no matter what happens, we're going to buy this deal, figure it out, and move forward. And we just thinking about being an observer, I'll let you guys observe for a minute, be a fly on the wall. We just lost a tremendous amount of money flipping a house.
Yeah, we did.
So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary here in Maui. And 10 years ago when we got married, we weren't even making what we just lost on this flip. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, a little sore subject there, George.
Well, you guys listening don't know this, but we've talked about this a few different times, and internally. And I'm a college dropout. Courtney didn't go to college, and so I kind of look at it like, hey, I just paid for my MBA twice, but we've also made a lot of money investing in real estate and flipping and buying rentals, and it just kind of comes with the territory, right? And we'll kind of get into these things and whether I was truly being an investor on that deal or being a speculator or a collector. Or yeah, that's kind of base level, an observer. You have anything else you want to add to observers or?
No, I was just going to say something regarding fear. I had a guest on my podcast recently, and she talked about how for her, and even one of our friends, Ashish, has used this reference before. And he was the first one who really instilled in me an idea of looking at fear differently. I was a guest on his podcast, and it was around fear, and it was about using fear as a motivator instead of a deterrent, and using it to take action instead of staying still. And so the fear of being held back, and the fear of missing out, and the fear of letting the fear actually say, no, I refuse to fail at this. So I'm going to move forward. I refuse to say in a year from now, I've taken no action steps. So I was just going to kind of add that on just as we were talking about fear, but yeah, I want to definitely dive into the rest of these profiles with you.
That's good. Cool. Well, let's jump to a speculator. Loves the action, and they buy anything. They're not afraid to take action. They love it. They're high rollers, thrill seekers, lottery lovers, gamblers.
They just want to be in the game.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't blame them because, post-COVID, after we figured out that we weren't all going to turn into zombies and die, man, everyone felt like a speculator. I was looking at people buying these flips, buying these rentals, and it was just crazy bidding wars, even on, distressed off-market deals. And what I noticed over that 18-month period was, it was extremely difficult to buy a deal because it felt like there was so much competition. The interesting thing was it didn't really matter what you paid for something because everything went up, and everything went up super high. So all of the money we made in that 18-month period, no joke, was because we just took action and bought something.
Yeah.
And there was no fundamentals. We messed up on a few flips and still made a boatload of money. And
it didn't feel real.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like this was supposed to be happening. And I have to just kind of, I don't mean to cut you off here. I have a lot of feelings around what happened during that time, because we'd been in the game for a little while, and we both are in the real estate industry collectively together doing what we're doing, but then also separately. So obviously me staging houses and our business and what it was doing there. It was fascinating meeting new people who were brand new at it, and they were thriving, and they were doing wonderful, and I'm happy for them. I am. However, I started to get really nervous, and I'm seeing it now, and I think you are too in these conversations, because now it's changed, and you actually have to put forth a lot more effort. You cannot. We have a saying, I'm sure your listeners have it or have heard you say it, slapping lipstick on a pig, right? And you can't do that anymore.
No.
But because everything was going so aggressively, no one was pausing to think, is it going to stop? Is the shoe going to fall? I mean, even we ran into that a little bit. But everyone, you're right. I mean, anyone and everyone who saw HGTV and realized, oh my gosh, it only takes 45 minutes to flip a house, I'm in. They jumped on board.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't just houses, cars.
Yeah, good point.
Skyrocketed, and we happened to be at a transition point where
they were hard to come by too.
They were really hard to come by, and we bought my truck. It's just an F-150. Don't get excited. I mean, it's a really nice truck, but nothing special about it, and we paid sticker price for it, even though it was a year old and had 11,000 miles on it, right? Because you couldn't get any cars. The supply chain was so broken, and we saw that across the board, just with crazy stuff that you're like, how does this make any sense? Right? And in real estate specifically, just because, I mean, we focus a lot on real estate, but you saw it a ton in the stock market too. I remember it doesn't matter what stock you bought, it just went up. Yeah. And it went crazy. Everything was going up.
Yep.
And
I can't wait for the Netflix series to come out documenting and recapping so many of these
oh
crazy
man,
things. It's going to be good.
yeah. Well, so and to that point, like the Netflix documentary, you know, back in the 1600s, and guys, this whole speculation thing is not new. Everyone forever has been trying to get rich quick. Mm-hmm. But back in the 1600s, I don't know if you've heard the story before, but there was a tulip bulb craze in Amsterdam. Have you ever heard this? Okay, so long story short, imported tulip bulbs at that time were like a craze. Sometime around 1635, well, take a step back. The tulip bulbs only went to Holland's wealthiest collectors. Okay, and this is at a time of no social media, but people caught wind, and then speculators got involved, and they started buying the bulbs, but they weren't buying them for their garden. They were buying them to resell them. So they were flipping tulip bulbs. Okay, so a flower that hasn't even bloomed yet, right? And then there was already short supply on it and a lot of demand. And so the small amount of pressure on the market forced legitimate tulip bulb vendors to bid against one another, which, you know, obviously, if you think about just simple economics, supply and demand, when there's no supply and a lot of demand, prices go up, right? So that's what happened. And then it wasn't too long after that a public market was created, and the prices of different bulb varieties were tracked publicly in taverns and meeting places. Okay?
Wow.
And then soon, more speculators jumped in and took advantage of the pinched market, which further drove up prices. Then, it's interesting, the market shifted from trading real bulbs, which you can only pull the bulbs up in a specific season of the year, right? To trading promissory notes for bulbs that would be dug up at a later date.
Wow.
Okay, so hey, instead of selling you this bulb today, this tulip bulb today, which by the way still hasn't even blossomed into a flower, I'll sell you the one for next year on a IOU, a promissory note, right? And this is important because the minute notes began to be bought on margin is what it's called. So they weren't even just saying, hey, IOUs. They were just saying, hey, IOU, and here's 10% of what the bulb would cost, and I'll give you 90% later. They actually got traded multiple times. And, you know, this is kind of like the credit card effect of, you know, if you've got $100 and you spend $100 in cash, it's more painful than if you just swipe your card for $100.
Yeah.
Right? You just don't feel it. So that opened up the tulip bulb to everyone, and for a couple of months the market just exploded as the Dutch middle class jumped in looking to make a fast buck, fast fortunes. And unfortunately, ordinary people mortgaged their farms and homes to buy single bulbs worth as much as a year's worth of income.
Holy cow.
And as quickly as that began, it ended. Frustrated merchants threw up their hands, they stopped buying the overpriced bulbs, and then a full-on panic ensued, and the bulb prices plummeted 90%. I mean, the crazy thing is, like, when I think about this and just thinking about the stock market, like, there were people jumping into cryptocurrencies and, you know, I'm not bagging on any sort of crypto right now. To be honest, I don't really understand crypto. That's why we don't invest in it. But we did. We bought some Bitcoin. We bought some other crypto coins.
So you were a spectator at
We
one time.
we were a speculator, right?
Yeah.
Not just a spectator.
Yeah.
But we were totally speculating. I had no clue what we were doing. Like, I had no business buying Bitcoin. I don't know. Like, could it take over? Maybe. Could it just go away? Maybe. But here's the interesting thing. Like, I remember hearing about Bitcoin when it was like $1,000 a coin. And then all of a sudden at the height, and it feels like I'm going to call it 2-month period. You know, I can look back and look at the data, but it feels like there was like a 2-month period where like, you know, it went from 10,000 to 20,000, from 20,000 to 30,000, 30,000 to 40,000. You know, and then it came back down a little bit, but then everyone rushed in and it went from 30,000 to 50,000. And as soon as it broke 50,000, like it just raced up to 63, I think is the most it got to. And then it just plummeted. And, you know, recently, like I know some people who bought at 63 and some people who had, you know, who were in the business and they probably had the knowledge and know-how to be buying at that time, which, you know, good for them. But then some might have been speculating, and, you know, no judgment here. But the point is, like, this get rich quick mentality has been around a while. And I think we saw it a ton. And the sad thing is, I'll bet there were people who took mortgages out or second mortgages out on their homes to go and buy Bitcoin, and then to have the value come down, you know, 60, 70%. And I'm okay with debt on real estate as long as, you know, it's reasonable and makes sense. But man, take out a mortgage to buy something that on speculation, like that's not true investing, right? Like you're just hoping the value goes up. And I think we saw a lot of that over the last few years. Kind of interesting. We definitely, though, like I said, bought a few houses on speculation.
Yeah.
Which wasn't true investing. And, you know, we invested in a development deal that, frankly, if I'm being honest, I was speculating more than I was actually investing, because I'm not a developer. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I now get the wonderful opportunity to learn. But when I bought it, it was just true speculation, you know, and at the time it was, everything kept going up and it was only getting more expensive. And, you know, the market's definitely shifted now. But yeah, so that's a speculator. We've given examples of when we were observers and speculators. A collector loves ownership, and they at least buy something. Okay, so we're kind of stepping up. And, you know, when I hear collector, I think of someone who is like a buy and hold investor, right? Like they buy, and if they're collecting, they're not selling, they're not speculating, they're not looking to make a quick buck, they're collecting something, right? And I think if you collect rental properties, like, that can be a great retirement. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I don't know so much on like collecting stamps or gold coins or cars. Like, you know, I know some people do really well collecting classic cars. Yeah. Things that go up in value, especially if there's sentimental reasons to it. But just being a collector of real estate, I think will serve most people better than like 401ks and traditional retirement plans. Mm-hmm. Just because I just believe in it. I think it's a better retirement plan than hoping Social Security is going to be around. Then, yeah. So, being a collector.
My thoughts on being a collector, you know, and obviously I get the cheat code because I'm looking at all the profiles here, and we haven't quite got to the investor one yet. But the collector, when I read this, it says, you know, they love ownership and they buy something. They buy something. I think about collectors that they're not necessarily, I don't think that the collector stage is bad by any means. I know ultimately what this book is trying to get to and what we're leading up to. But when you hear the word they buy something, does that necessarily mean it's the best thing? Mm-hmm. And they love ownership. And so in their minds, are they just buying something to have something? Mm-hmm. And to be able to have that peace of mind, that security, like, okay, well, at least I own something, and it's real estate, so it's bound to, you know, go up at one point in time. And while I don't disagree with that model, and I'm not saying it's necessarily terrible, there is better, right? There's better ways of doing things and better ways of looking at it. And owning something it's never a bad idea. But I look at, when I read that, I think about times in our life that we bought, it's actually the one that keeps coming to my mind is our very first rental mm-hmm. that we bought.
Yep.
And it felt great to finally buy and own something that we were not flipping. We were buying it to hold it, and it just felt good to own something. However, that wasn't the right thing. That was not going to stay the right long-term thing.
Right.
And I'm grateful for our growth. I
Yeah.
really am. I'm grateful for the seasons that we've gone through, because we ultimately learned at the end of the day that particular property for us was a something. It wasn't the very best thing for us. It was really great to get us in the game. We finally took action. We were finally, in it, and we learned so many lessons and a lot about each other in that first transaction.
Do you remember the address to that house?
Something 2200 West.
7651 South, 200 West.
No, not 200.
2200. Yeah. 7651 South, 2200 West in West Jordan. Go ahead and Google it. You can Zillow it, right? You can see, and no, to your point, it got us in the game. It was an opportunity. We bought it from a seller I represented because he wasn't getting any other offers. Worked a deal out with him. He seller financed it. I regret selling it as quick as we did because we only held it almost 2 years. Granted, it got us into the first home that we built.
Yeah.
Not the first home we bought, because we bought a foreclosed townhouse first, and then we built our next home, which that allowed us to get into our next home and a rental property, and then that kind of led us on the journey to where we're at today. So you're right, it absolutely was a blessing we bought it. And that's kind of...
Well, and I'm glad we didn't stay a collector, is what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad we didn't say, and you know what's funny is the guy we bought it from, we know him here locally, and he totally is a collector.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say his portfolio was necessarily all the right things.
Yeah.
I would say his portfolio was, he really was a collector.
Yep.
And I think it'd been a long time since he evaluated. And just pausing there for a second too, keeping an eye on your personal journey and growth within your real estate realm of things allows you to recognize when it is time to let something go. Otherwise, I think you do become a collector. You can be in the game, you buy things, you hold on to things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do believe there are seasons when you need to step back and say, it's time to make some new moves. That this is no longer serving where I'm at. And I think about a friend of ours, and he owned a lot of doors in Utah. He still does. But what I'm getting at is he's taken a big shift. And he recognized, and he was continually taking a peek at his portfolio and recognizing where is it now time to grow. He was really savvy and really smart and bought a lot of single family properties. And then as he continued to grow himself and as he continued to increase his wealth of knowledge, he then decided, you know what, I'm ready to get into a lot of multi-family units. And so he began to recognize which ones it was time for him to offload some properties, not because they were no longer great properties, but they were no longer serving the direction he was going.
Yep. And
had he held on to them while also simultaneously deciding, I want to go forward and I want to also get into multifamily. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but I love his method. I think it was so smart that he took those properties and decided it's time to let them go. And it's time for me to now take action and, not be consumed by this stuff. I need to go forth and I need to actually dive now into this because it's going to grow me and it's going to stretch me. And it's now time for me to make that move. And I kind of look at it like the circle of life, because when he started doing that, those wonderful, great properties were now being picked up by others who were just getting their foot in the door, who were just getting into the game.
Yep.
And it was honestly very cool to look at. And so, but had he held on to all of that, I honestly believe he would have turned into a collector. When you do that, when you don't evaluate what you have and where you're going.
Oh, that's so good. And you kind of have to go through all of these stages, right? Because when you're first getting started and you're buying your first or second or third rental property, you don't really, in my opinion, get the luxury of sitting down and being like, okay, I've got $10 million in assets. What do I want my portfolio to look like, right? Like usually you're like, hey, we've got $30,000 and this is what we're going to buy our next investment property with. Or, you take a home equity line of credit out on a property to be able to go buy another property. Like usually when you're kind of growing through this and you've made it past the observer stage and hopefully skip the speculator stage, but hey, I've been there, no judgment. And you get to the collector stage where you're like, okay, I'm going to build this portfolio. Like sometimes you don't have the luxury of going, well, okay, starting with the end in mind when I'm 80 years old, this is what I want my portfolio to look like. And so, I'm going to go buy this 100-unit apartment complex. Like you just don't have the means, right? So normally you've got to collect some stuff, get in the game, stay in the game, learn what you like, learn what you don't like, grow as a person, grow as an investor, and then evaluate, like you said, your portfolio where you go, okay, maybe it's time to sell this property that's right next to the freeway that we're having a lot of issues with, but we have a ton of equity in. And then you move that equity into something that serves you better, right? Like we've certainly done that where, we had a townhouse that we had a ton of equity in, and we sold that and moved that equity into a sixplex that we've, been fixing up along the way. And like that sixplex is, I don't know about you, but it's one of my favorite properties we own.
That's a good one.
It cash flows really well. We've got great tenants in there. We've got a great loan on it. Like there is so much about it. But had we not initially bought that townhouse, which by the way didn't cash flow, but we bought it. We got a really good deal on it, seller financing. It was off market. We bought it with very little money, and then sat on it for a year or two. The equity grew. Part of that was because we bought it below market. Part of that was because we could buy it seller financed, and like that is what allowed us to get into the sixplex. And a lot of times, like people look at it and they're like, oh man. In fact, I remember being in this stage where we have seen this sixplex probably about as long as we've been married, right? And I always said like, oh man, I would love to buy that or something like that one day. And the opportunity came around and we were able to take action because we had taken action previously. Just to kind of wrap up collectors, there's someone that buys something on the basis of an emotional value rather than an investment value. Or it's emotional value first and investment value second, right? So like when we have bought some properties before, it's truly just because I've wanted to be a collector and I wanted to own doors. And, hindsight being 20/20, I wouldn't do anything differently because a lot of times, buying one property led us to another. And that second property was worlds better, right? And collectors usually buy for love, status, aesthetic gratification, pleasure. Like when I think of collectors, I think of, Beanie Babies. And, I collected Beanie Babies. And, they're now all at my parents' house and our kids get the wonderful opportunity to play with them every time. And, I just look at it and I'm like, oh man, like I collected Beanie Babies and luckily, kind of grew up and moved on. But that's kind of what it is. Like, I remember people who bought Beanie Babies, I knew I was going to get on tangents with the collectors. I remember people who bought Beanie Babies thinking, like, this is going to be my retirement, are these Beanie Babies, right? And, it's interesting. I should hop on eBay right now and see, like, what some Beanie Babies are going for, because they were, like, $5 or $6 at the time when I was growing up. And I remember there's even a little shop in Riverton where I grew up. You don't know this, but it'll be fun to tell this story. Right next to the Little Caesars on 126 South. Okay. And like they sold Beanie Babies. I remember they had this big sign in the store that said, like, we sell Thai Beanie Babies. And I remember going there and like being able to save up my money and buy a Beanie Baby. And like, the person at the desk, they were a great salesman. They were telling me how each of them was going to be worth so much money in the future. And you got to protect the tags, and you got to get these little plastic things.
Yeah, that's actually who made. That's really who made it big in this business was the tag protector people. Because I remember those things.
Oh my gosh!
So that company making those plastic half heart-shaped tags, they killed it.
Oh.
They saw an opportunity and they jumped.
They knew people would collect them. And, the reason I bring the Beanie Babies up is, at the time I thought I was investing. And a lot of the times that's what collectors do. They think they're investing. And, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But they're buying something and they're holding on to it. And again, with rental properties, that's not a bad way to go. Because if you buy a decent rental property in a decent area and you hang on to it for 30 years, that tenant's going to pay the mortgage off for you. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a way better way than us trying to save $500 a month in a 401k, mm-hmm. right? I'd way rather have a tenant pay off a property for me. And even if that's all that happened, they paid off a property for me, you know? So a Beanie Baby can't do that.
Right.
So anyways, let's go to investors and then wrap up because I think the beach is calling my name. Investors, they love opportunity and they buy the right thing. So when I think of an investor, I think of someone who they, A, have a bunch of experience and knowledge, and B, they've got a plan, right? So it's no longer, I think there's 3 stages of an investor: a starter, a builder, and an ender. So a starter is years 1 through 10. It's probably most of that you're just trying to collect things like we talked about, but they're all over the place. They want to do wholesaling, flipping, they want to do buy and holds. They want to do self-storage. They want to own a condo in Maui. They want to do it all, right? Builders, it's usually years 11 through 30, and a builder knows what they want, has their criteria, and they get after it. So, and then there's an ender. An ender's someone who's been investing for 30 or more years. And typically enders are concerned with one of 2 things. 1, they want to pay the least amount of taxes possible. And 2, they want a preservation of capital. So they want to, if they've got a nest egg of $5 million or whatever the number is, they want to preserve that capital and have that pay interest or dividends or whatever that maintains their lifestyle so they can enjoy retirement. And they want to preserve that capital and pay the least amount of taxes possible. Okay. But just going back to the builder, I think this is really investors, right? They try to minimize risk. Unlike collectors, they buy on actual investment value versus an emotional value. Investors, they know what market value is. They know how to find assets below market value. They don't count on appreciation to bail them out, right? Like most people have seen for the last few years. They make their money going in. They find distressed assets. They're a bargain hunter, right? They think and act like investors because they go, hey, this is my box and this is where I'm going to play. This is what I do, right? And this is the point, in my opinion, where you've got the minimum amount of risk and the maximum amount of return. Because you've gone through being an observer. You've gone through being a speculator. You've gone through being a collector. And then once you get to an investor, I feel like you kind of dial in and go, okay, this is what I really enjoy owning. This is what's brought me the best returns. This is what has served us. And, at least in this next stage, because again, it's all about growth. Mm-hmm. Usually people don't get to buying 100-unit apartment complexes if they've never bought, a 6-plex or a 12-plex or right. 15 or 20 or whatever. Usually it's growth. So
yeah, I think about that saying, if you want to be able to handle a little, you need to, or if you want to be able to handle a lot, you need to know first how to handle a little.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the interesting thing is, you look at people who win the lottery. And in fact, I was reading an article on my phone the other night where some guy, he was a trash man in the UK and he won the lottery. And 8 years later, after he blew every penny he made in the lottery, he was back working to be a trash man again, right? And I think when you become an investor, you understand the value of a dollar. You understand how to get better than average deals and, how to affordably fix things up and you understand what you want to hold long term.
Yeah.
and then you get after it, and like you don't get distracted by going, oh, well, this week I'm going to focus on buying a mobile home park, and this week I'm going to focus on buying a self-storage facility, and none of those are bad investments, but they might not be the right investment for that person.
I love that you said that, and I don't remember who it was that we heard speak, and I know it'll come to me like later today when we're on a helicopter flying over Maui. I'm gonna be like, I remember now, it was so and so. But I remember we attended, we were together somewhere for a real estate seminar, and I say seminar, I don't remember what we were doing. We were hearing someone speak, and they were doing a great job. And I remember what they specifically were talking about, which was just try to stay away from the shiny object syndrome. And they were talking about how so many times investors will get in and they won't even master their first craft, if you will, before they're hopping to the next and the next and the next. Mm-hmm. And those are the times that they really get themselves into some serious trouble, and sometimes trouble they can't ever climb them, they appear they can't ever climb themselves out of. Mm-hmm. It might have been Matt Atkinson.
I think it was.
Who said that. But I thought that was so good because, and you said it earlier, an investor, they know how to minimize the risk and maximize the return. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you learn over time, but you don't learn it when you are running in a ton of different directions and you're not spending time really knowing how to grow in that one area that you're trying to focus in. And so, you're right. I'm grateful we didn't run right out and buy a sixplex. I think the one area, and I think you're always going to have this regret, and maybe one day I'll share this regret with you. I don't yet. But is that you wish that we had bought a duplex first. Mm-hmm. That was your biggest, if going back in time, I wish we had bought a duplex first.
Yeah, and lived in one half and rent the other half out.
Yes, that was your dream. Yep. And I'm okay with our journey. I really am. I think that it was meant to be how it's played out. But I think about, had we done the duplex route, it would have given us the opportunity to know how to manage on a different level sooner. And that's okay that that's not what we did. For me, personally, it's okay that that's not what we did. But I want to point out our journey and what has worked for us is, you guys, we've been all stages of real estate. And there have been times, even with the knowledge of knowing what we should do and how we should do it, we still make mistakes. And I think everyone along their journey, they do that from time to time. It's a part of growing. It's a part of becoming better. Just not staying stuck there, right? Not letting the fear consume you and say, well, that, this didn't work out. I guess I better go away. And I actually recently did a podcast just about asking the right questions to the right people. And I'm grateful for the mentors we have, because even just with the like you say, the tremendous loss we had recently, thank goodness we have really amazing people around us and in our corner who pick up the phone and are willing to have a conversation that say, hey, I understand you had that big loss, but don't let this stop you. Mm-hmm. You have still all the knowledge. You are still an investor. Don't let yourself go backwards. Propel yourself forward. Get back to the basics. You know how to do this. Go forward and do it.
Mm-hmm. So good. Well, let's wrap it up with this, because that was so good. Warren Buffett said this, and I really like this quote. There's a tendency with small decisions to think you can do them for not very good reasons. And so that was his quote. The truth is, as an investor, all of your financial decisions, whether it's huge, small, even just like getting, drink every single day, whatever that may be, right? Caffeinated, uncaffeinated, whatever. They should all be for good reasons. And it's the unconscious habits that guide us all day, every day. So, and if I could persuade anyone in this episode, it's to just think like an investor. And so, Gary Keller, I'll finish it off with him because this kind of started the whole conversation. He challenges you in this book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. It's on page 120 if anyone wants to go find it and they have the book or want to buy it. He gives you this challenge, and I'll further extend it to you guys as I work on it myself. He says, here's what I want you to begin to do. In the grocery store or at the gas station, anytime you find yourself with a credit card in your hand, I I want you to do two things. First, say to yourself, I'm an investor, not a consumer. Okay. Second, you ask yourself, is this the best use for my money?
Oh,
am
that's so good.
Yeah. Am I using my money like an investor or like a consumer? When you find yourself comparing price and value, hunting for the best buy, and being willing to walk away if you don't find it, congratulations, you're beginning to think like an investor. You're a shopper, not a buyer. You're treating your small financial decisions the same way you treat your big ones. And that's, the challenge I'm gonna try to work on myself, and I hope you guys do too. And even just thinking about, like, we're recording this in Maui. We stayed at a Marriott. Right next to us is the Waldorf Astoria. Right next to that is the Four Seasons. When we were looking at this hotel, I think our hotel room was like $500 a night, it's expensive, right? But the Waldorf Astoria and the Four Seasons, they were like $2,500 a night for a very similar room, right? Now, like, again, price, value, like we could have very easily stayed over there. We'd be at about the same geographic location, right? We'd be getting about the same experience. And we chose to go with this one because then we'd have a little bit of extra money to go and do other things, right? Like we're taking a helicopter ride, which is going to be really cool. First time I've ever been in a helicopter. We're going to see the island. We're going to do a lot of stuff, right? We got rained out of our luau last night, but like we wouldn't have had that money if we would have, well, maybe we would have, we just put it on a credit card or whatever. But like, it just goes to say, start thinking like an investor and not a consumer. And then you will eventually, I think, become a better investor, and you'll value what you're spending your money on more.
That's awesome.
So, have anything else to add?
No, I love that you shared that prompt from Gary Keller, and I'm going to take that on myself just with some of the things that you and I are both working on. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, guys, I hope that this podcast has helped you on your journey to financial freedom, your journey to becoming a financially free investor. And we're here to continue to help you, however big or small that may be. It's in the mindset. It's in you guys' motivation, and we're here to continue to give you the mindset and motivation and, stuff that you can do as you march to your first million on your path to financial freedom. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in. I know you guys have a lot of choices of content for podcasts. I would greatly appreciate if you shared this with someone that might benefit from knowing the 4 different types of investors, because I think we can all learn and grow, and we can all become better investors, and, not be an observer, not be a speculator for sure. And, collecting isn't bad, but if you can step into purposefully buying something as an investment for the right reasons that meet your goals, I think you're going to be better off, and always evaluating, does my portfolio meet my current goals? So with that being said, it's been 52 minutes. We're signing off.
See ya.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Financially Free Investor. If you found value in this episode or know someone who would find value in this information, please share with them, subscribe, and send us a review.